Hi everyone, so today we're going to talk about operational definitions and why they're necessary for doing research. So first off, let's talk about what an operational definition is. So operational definition actually allows you to translate an abstract concept into something more concrete that you can actually measure and assess. If you think about different examples of variables that you might measure in a research study, you need to provide a definition of the variable in terms of how you're going to measure it for your particular research study. That could apply to how you're going to manipulate your variable, but also how you're going to measure and assess the outcome variable. So you should always provide an operational definition of both your independent variables and your dependent variables. And to give you some examples of abstract concepts that need to be defined, take for instance intelligence. Intelligence can mean many different things to different people. Some people think of intelligence as book smarts, but other people think about it in terms of, survival skills or your street smarts. Typically, with a classic intelligence test such as the Stanford Binet, it looks at a combination of both just an aptitude measure, so for instance, working memory capacity, but it also actually look at how much knowledge you've acquired through schooling. But there's also other theories that would actually argue that that's not all that intelligence is all about, that there's other things to consider as well. Another example would be, for instance, life success, right? Some people might measure life success or success in general as just looking at a person's income, but other people might look at it in terms of, how much love do they have in their life? Do they have many close friends? Have they accomplished kind of their personal goals? Are they satisfied with where they are in their life? So depending on what your research question is, it might really be important to operationally define your variable, right? If you maybe want to look at how does being a successful person influence your health status, right? You probably wouldn't want to just look at a person's income as a measure of success because it's probably not a good predictor of health outcomes. Instead, you might want to give a survey that assesses how satisfied somebody is with their life, maybe both with their work environment, but also their personal life. Success can be defined in many different ways, right? People have very different goals, so that's going to determine how they're going to feel about how successful they are. So you should be very clear in your definition of a variable, how you're going to assess it, and it should be in line with kind of the background research that you've done on the topic. So depending on what your IV and DV are, it should match how you're assessing each one of those two measures. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at two examples of operational definitions of a term and figure out which one is actually the better one. So for instance, here we have which one of the following definitions of gregarious is more operational? So how sociable are you? A, the option would be talking on the phone with friends for at least 2 hours each week. And then B would be being open and friendly when in social gatherings with others. So in this case, clearly, you probably guessed it, A is the better option because it's actually something that's measurable, right? You can actually check a box whether or not you actually talk at least for 2 hours with your friends each week or not. Whereas being open and friendly in social gatherings, right, that's a great definition, but it really isn't measurable. Another example would be, which of the following definitions of being computer literate is more operational? A would be taking at least 2 formal courses of instruction on the use of computers in an accredited school. And B would be having knowledge of the origins and uses of computers in modern society and their implications. Again, A would be the better option because that's something that I could directly assess. I could ask, have you taken these classes? Yes or no. And then based on that, I could determine if somebody is computer literate. So those are just two examples. So you always want to make sure that you can actually assign a number, or it's quantifiable what you're measuring, right? There is a clear answer, either yes or no, and it's not something that's up for interpretation by the participant. You want to minimize that people actually interpret your questions in different ways by giving a very clear definition so they know exactly which box they should check. Okay, so let's look at another example. So, for instance, males and females may differ in their approaches to helping behavior. So you can probably think of some examples where, a male would be probably be more likely to help, such as maybe with car troubles, whereas a female may be more likely to bring dinner to a sick friend, right? That's very stereotypical, but let's just, for the sake of argument, let's just use that as an example. So if you develop two operational definitions for these two different concepts, one that would emphasize either the male style or the female style of helping behavior. So let's kind of think about this. So maybe for a male style helping behavior definition, you could say something like, on a survey, you could ask, tell me the number of times in the last 6 months that you provided hands-on help to a friend in need, such as helping them to move or fix a car or, build a piece of furniture. And then for the female style, you could say, ask a participant, how many times in the last 6 months did you provide support to a friend by listening to their problems and letting them vent on the phone, maybe? So you can probably see how, depending on how you operationally define your variable, the helping behavior, it's going to influence how the outcome of the study will be. So in some cases, right, you might actually over or underestimate helping behavior because of your definition. So you have to always be aware how your operational definition might actually lead to different conclusions or results in your study. And, likewise, you should think about, so what does this really tell us about the importance of operational definitions? It's pretty obvious with this example that you have to be very careful how you define your variables, because depending on how you do that is going to be influential on how your results might come out. Okay, so that's all about operational definitions for today. And we're going to do an activity in class about this.